Scroll number 4. What I don't control, controls me. Clason served in the army, built a map company, and watched it collapse. He was not a banker. He was not trained in finance. He was a man who had seen money disappear and spent the rest of his working life trying to understand why. What he found was not complicated. The money did not disappear because of bad luck. It disappeared because of desire without discipline. Because every time there was a decision between what was needed and what was wanted, the wanting won. That pattern, repeated often enough, empties any purse. It does not matter how much comes in. What matters is how much stays. Most people have more desires than their earnings can satisfy. This is not a problem. This is the condition of being human. The problem is believing that the answer to unsatisfied desire is more income. It is not. More income produces more desire. The expenses rise to meet whatever comes in. The man who earns twice as much as he did 5 years ago is often no further ahead than he was then. The purse has not grown. It has simply learned to hold more and lose more. The leak is not in the income. The leak is in the spending. Clason said it simply. What each man calls his necessary expenses will always grow to equal his income unless he protests to the contrary. That sentence has not changed in 100 years. It is not a financial principle. It is a description of human nature. What I don't control, controls me. This is what desire without discipline looks like. Not recklessness, not stupidity, just the slow accumulation of small decisions that each felt reasonable at the time. The slightly nicer apartment, the subscription that seemed worth it, the meal that was easier than cooking. Each one small. Together they are the purse with holes. Together they consume what could have been kept. Together they ensure that no matter how hard a man works, he ends the month with what he started with. Nothing. I know this pattern. I have lived it. I have told myself that the budget would start next month, when things were more settled. Next month things were never more settled. I have told myself that this expense was an exception. The exceptions became the rule. I have looked at my earnings and wondered where they went, and the answer was always the same. They went where I sent them. I sent them without thinking. That is the whole of it. Arcad taught his students to engrave upon clay each thing they desired to spend. Select those that are necessary. Cross out the rest. Not because the crossed out desires do not matter. They matter. But they cannot all be satisfied. A man has more desires than earnings can reach. He must choose which desires he will serve and which he will refuse. That choosing is not deprivation. It is ownership. The man who chooses deliberately owns his life. The man who spends without choosing is owned by his desires. That was me. Not in a dramatic way. In the quiet way that most financial damage happens. One small decision at a time. What I don't control, controls me. The budget is not a cage. This is the misunderstanding that stops most people before they begin. They hear the word budget, and they hear restriction. What Clason meant was something different. The budget is a light in a dark cave. It shows the leaks. It makes the invisible visible. It takes the vague feeling of never having enough and turns it into something specific. Something that can be changed. You cannot fix what you cannot see. The budget shows you what you are actually doing with what you have. That is not restriction. That is power. I have sat with my expenses and seen myself clearly. It was not comfortable. The gap between what I thought I was spending and what I was actually spending was not small. I was not careless. I was not reckless. I was simply not paying attention. Attention is the discipline, not willpower. not deprivation. Attention. The man who knows exactly where every coin goes is not controlled by his spending. He controls it. That difference is everything. Clason's map company failed. He rebuilt his understanding of money from the ground up, not as a banker but as a man who had lost what he built and needed to understand why. What he wrote was not theory. It was the product of watching money behave across decades. The desire to spend more than what comes in is not a modern problem. It is the oldest financial problem there is. Every civilization that has ever existed has had men who earned well and kept nothing. The problem does not change. Only the awareness of it changes. What I don't control, controls me. The man who has never made a budget believes he is free. He is not free. He is controlled by every desire that arrives. Each one makes the decision for him. The merchant makes it when he displays the thing. The friend makes it when he suggests the meal. These are not his decisions. They are decisions made by everyone around him that he has simply agreed to. The man with a budget has already made his decisions before any of them arrive. He does not need to resist. He has already decided. I draw the boundary, not because someone tells me to, because I have seen what happens when I do not. I have ended months with empty hands and full memories of things I cannot remember buying. I will not do that again. I live on 9 parts of 10. I keep 1 part first. I spend the 9 with intention. Each coin that leaves my hand goes where I send it, not where the desire sends it, where I send it. Control is not comfortable at first. It asks something of you that spending freely does not ask. It asks you to say no to yourself. That is harder than saying no to anyone else. We say no to others without thinking. We say yes to ourselves without thinking. The work is to reverse this, to say yes with thought and no with the same ease we apply to everyone else. I practice this, not perfectly, not without failure, but consistently. I engrave the decisions before I make them. I look at what I want and I decide which wants I will serve this month. I cross out the rest without regret. The crossed out desires do not disappear. They wait. Some of them are still waiting years later and I find I do not miss them at all. Others return and I serve them when I have planned for them. Either way I chose. I was not chosen. This is what Clason built his life around after the map company fell. Not restriction, not fear. The quiet discipline of a man who has seen what desire without control costs, and decided he would not pay that price again. He did not need a crisis to remind him. The map company was enough. What I don't control, controls me. What I don't control, controls me. What I don't control, controls me.